What are we watching this Turkey Day? I'll tell you on the TV Watch Guide. This is the Michael Welch Podcast.
All my blessings, all my blessings, all my blessings, all my blessings.
I need my blessings every penny. Daily counting every single one, I'm seeing plenty. Level up and watch that beat turn into a Bentley. See I'm stunning, so I'm all I'm thinking, please don't tell me.
Happy Turkey Day. Happy Turkey Day. So, we've had some fantastic college basketball going on throughout the week. If you haven't checked in on Purdue and Gonzaga, and then Purdue and Tennessee, and Marquette and Kansas is working out right now as I am recording this, so I'll have to go back and watch this. Can't even keep track of it all with these early season tournaments that, of course, continue through Thanksgiving here. But let's touch on Wednesday day, I guess, through the evening, as they're been going on through the days, of course. So let's touch base on that, starting with Wednesday here. No college football or NFL games on Wednesday. We're just passing a couple of MACtion games here on Tuesday. College basketball's got at least 4 top 25 teams on the board, and the NBA's got a 14-game slate as well on Wednesday heading into Turkey Day here. Actually tips off at 11 a.m. We do have Buffalo and Ionia. Not that that's a real heart stopper there. But at noon, North Carolina kicks off the Battle for Atlantis pickup there. I believe we're just tipping off that one, if I'm not mistaken. But they're about 12-point favorites on ESPN on Northern Iowa, which is not off to a great start this season. But Armana Babcock, whose name I will never say correctly, is off to a great start there for North Carolina. And the Tar Heels at noon on ESPN. We then follow that up as well. We've got, several games going at noon there, but 1:30 Boston College is on as well. They're undefeated, playing Colorado State on the CBS Sports Network for the Hall of Fame Classic. Not that either of those teams are of high esteem at this particular point, but 2:30 should have a great one. Tennessee, who still has a number 7 next to their name, did take a tumble the other day in a ranked battle. This is the Maui Invitational. A whole bunch of good teams here. Syracuse, Purdue, Gonzaga, Kansas, Marquette, UCLA, just a loaded slate. All these teams should be in the NCAA tournament that I just mentioned. We do have Charmander in here as well, who will not be, but just a great mix of the other 7 teams here. Syracuse as well in the mix. Now, Tennessee did take a tumble to Purdue, and that should put them in the bracket, I believe, to play the loser of Marquette and Kansas, who are both top 4 teams. So that should be the 2:30 matchup on Wednesday. A big ball game there between 2 top 10 teams on the slate. And also at 2:30, we have the Battle for Atlantis between 3-1 Villanova and 3-0 Texas Tech in another game there, even though Villanova took an early upset in the season already. So a couple good ones there. But again, we've had top 10 teams battling all week so far, and Tennessee and presumably Kansas, who's been trailing against Marquette for a good chunk of Tuesday, will probably be the highlight on that 2:30 slate there. 3:30 ESPN Plus will have Ole Miss at Temple. We've got Creighton at 4 o'clock on the CBS Sports Network, playing a 2-2 Loyola Chicago to start the season in the Hall of Fame Classic. We do have Purdue presumably playing the winner here, which is Marquette. So it'll probably be Purdue and Marquette, number 2 and number 4 at the moment, at 5 o'clock on ESPN. So right after the end of the normal work day there. 5 o'clock also has on ESPN2 Michigan hosting Memphis. A great start for both of those teams, a 3-1 to 3-0 squad. 6 o'clock, we've got number 24 Virginia at 4-1, who was blown out the other day in a difficult loss. They're hosting 2-2 West Virginia, so hopefully they'll rebound from the Wisconsin 65 to 41 loss the other day. But a great slate there before dinner time. Just a half a dozen great games on the slate there. 7 o'clock, we've got Oregon State hosting number 13 Baylor on ESPN2 for the NIT tip-off. We do have Cincinnati at 4-0 hosting Georgia Tech at 2-1 at 7 o'clock on the Big 12 network as well. 7:30, we'll see number 20 Arkansas hosting Stanford. Both teams 3-1 so far in the season. Arkansas slight favorite there as they're starting to get things around for that team on ESPNU. We also have Nebraska hosting Duquesne on the Big 12 Network at 8 o'clock for the Cornhusker Classic. Nebraska, only 7.5-point favorite so far in that one. James Madison stayed undefeated. They're ranked number 22. They're 5-0. They are playing Fresno State, who's 3-1 for the Cancun Challenge at 8:30. That does not yet have a network. The same time, that Wisconsin team, 3-2, hosting SMU, who's 4-1 on FS1 for the Fort Myers tip-off. 9:30 going later, we have Pitt at 4-0 hosting Florida 3-1 on ESPN2, still on the NIT tip-off there. Florida 3.5-point favorites. And going late night, we do have Toledo at UC Irvine for the Ball Dog Classic. Just a couple smaller schools going at it there. And at midnight, we have a big one in Maui. UCLA at 4-1 hosting Gonzaga at 3-1. 2 Player of the Year candidates in Zach Edey and Adam Bona, of course, for those two teams respectively. So if you're only trying to identify the really key impactful games, it starts at 2:30 with Tennessee and presumably Kansas there at 2:30 on ESPN. You can follow that up by keeping an eye on at 5 o'clock on ESPN with Purdue and Marquette. And then DVR, the late night game if you're on the East Coast, between Gonzaga and UCLA at midnight. Now there's plenty in between there, but those are the 3 top of the hill matchups there. We also have NBA action, of course, about a dozen games on the slate, a couple of them on more popularized network TV. ESPN's going to have a doubleheader. The 7:30 Celtics hosting the Bucks, and the late night one will be Suns hosting the Warriors. We do still have some injuries here. Derek White possibly out for the game. That would be unfortunate. He is questionable at the moment. Also, Damian Lillard is questionable. It'd be nice to see these two teams at full strength. That is still on the table. It'd be great to see Celtics a popular pick to win the finals by those folks that are true NBA heads. I'm sure money's coming in on the Bucks, but we know their defense has been a problem, particularly with Lillard and the problems there in the front court. But this would still be an excellent game to catch on ESPN there. In the back end, Bradley Beal, I still don't think has played a single game for the Phoenix Suns. He's been banged up. He will not be playing tonight, I don't think, versus the Phoenix Suns. And we've got a questionable Devin Booker as well for the Suns. So they still, I don't think, have played a complete game with their big trio there together. And we know the Warriors are having problems with their roster, with Curry being the primary focal point of that offense to just such an extreme extent. A number was posted earlier in the week. I apologize, can't remember who it was exactly, but a Warriors social account that stated that he has more three-pointers than the rest of the team has combined made field goals in the season. Perhaps that's changed with the game since that post, but he is just such a main point of that offense that it's overwhelming. But that could still be a decent ball game in the evening as well. Some of the other top games on the slate for the NBA at local and league pass: the Magic are 9-3, hosting the Nuggets at 10-4. At 7 o'clock, Nuggets less than 5-point favorites in that one. The Hawks played a game that went to the 300 plus points against the Pacers tonight, and they will be playing the Nets on the back end of a doubleheader. Both teams 6-7. That's at 7:30. The Cavs are hosting the Heat at 7:30 as well. The 8-6 and 9-4 ball club there. The Pacers playing the back end of that their doubleheader as well, hosting the Raptors at 6-8. Timberwolves and Sixers 10-3 and 10-4. 8 o'clock. Minnesota favored by a nice margin at home, surprisingly. Pelicans hosting the Kings at 8, 7-7 and 8-5. Pelicans roster struggling a bit there. Health has been a problem with De'Aaron Fox there for the Kings, but that'll be a good one. Thunder are out to 10-4. The Bulls at 5-10. Sounds like they're shopping Zach LaVine possibly and moving pieces to the roster, which they should have done heading into the season. OKC favored in that one. And Lakers and Mavs will be on late, 10:30, 9-6, 9-5 for those two teams. Luka still averaging over 30 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists per game. LeBron averaging 26 points, 8-6 in his whatever year we're in now. So several great games on the slate there. And again, just a loaded college basketball slate. So it'll be a great Wednesday if you aren't involved in other activities as you're finishing up your, at least the beginning half of your work week. Now, Turkey Day, the NBA takes off. College football offers us a little side, the Egg Bowl between Mississippi and Mississippi State. We, of course, have our main course of 3 NFL games, but the argument could be made for those that enjoy college basketball that is the main course. Or you could say, for those of us that don't enjoy turkey but find another piece of food particularly appetizing on the table, the college basketball is the turkey alternative because we have a handful of top 25 teams in action and at least one top 25 match on the table for sure with Michigan State and Arizona. So we're going to have a loaded college basketball day and a few football games. So here we go. Starting at noon, we'll get the ESPN Events Invitational. We do know we have number 12 Texas A&M and Penn State tipping on ESPN at that point. Both teams off to a rather shocking 4-0. The Aggies is expected to possibly win the SEC, to certainly be in the mix there. They have not too bad of a schedule so far. They have wins over Ohio State and SMU to make them stand out. They have a pretty good roster so far, looking strong. Wade Taylor, 17 points a game. Radford, 15. Coleman, 13 and 11 points per game. And not a great 3-point shooting team. So we'll see. We'll see. The Nittany Lions have not played a very difficult schedule so far and have 3 guys averaging double figures as well, led by Kane Clary, 17.5 points, 3 boards, 2 assists, and 35% shooting from 3 so far. It could be an interesting ball game. Also at noon, the Hall of Fame Classic and Battle for Atlantis Classic will be going on ESPN and an undetermined network for Hall of Fame. So far, the Hall of Fame Classic has Boston College, Colorado State, Creighton, and Loyola Chicago carryovers. Expect Creighton to, of course, be the front runner in that particular group. And Battle for Atlantis is, of course, the carryovers on ESPN2 from the night previous, which includes Michigan, Memphis, Arkansas, North Carolina, Villanova, Texas Tech, Stanford, and Northern Iowa. So a strong slate there for at least 4 to 6 of the participants, depending on your feelings. And we'll have a nice collection of teams playing throughout the day for that particular tournament. So that starts at noon on ESPN2 and is the stronger bracket there. 12:30 as well. We will also have our Detroit Lions kicking off on Fox, 8-2, hosting the Packers at 4-6. My weekly picks, I do have the Lions covering this game, although just barely. Playing well, barely beating the Bears last week, kind of a regression for Jared Goff there, although the Bears defense looked healthy and good as well. Packers, though, Jordan Love hasn't looked awesome this year, but he hasn't looked horrible either. I think the Lions can certainly run on them, but I think the defense for the Lions has had some problems as well. I think we'll have points in this game. The over-under is 46.5, but I think the Lions can come out ahead here, and they don't win very often on Thanksgiving, so that would be a great victory for them. So moving on later into the afternoon here at 2:30, ESPN Events Invitational picks up again, but Butler hosting Florida Atlantic, who's currently ranked 19th. That tough loss to Bryant still holding in their mouths, but they have great returning roster coming back, hoping to beat up on the Butler Bulldogs. They did get blown out by Michigan State their last time out. Haven't played tough opponents in their victories, and hoping to possibly make the the NCAA tournament this year. Not looking so great, but we'll see. They've had a rough couple years here. That's at 2:30. The Battle for Atlantis will also pick up from there as well. Arkansas, Memphis, Michigan. So we'll see the next round of that playing throughout the day as well. 3 o'clock, we'll also see another invitational, Randy Children's Invitational. 3-1 Iowa will host Oklahoma on FS1 at 3 o'clock there. I have not had an opportunity to watch either of these teams yet this season. They are neither of them are ranked top 25. Iowa's played Creighton tight so far this season. Oklahoma has not had a challenge on the schedule yet. So this will be the first real challenge for Oklahoma. But these are certainly 2 top 100 teams per KenPom. I believe they're top 60 teams per KenPom. At 3 o'clock, we continue the Hall of Fame Classic, which is the lighter one there. with Creighton as a front runner. I assume that'll be on ESPNU. 4 o'clock will be number 21 Michigan State hosting number 3 Arizona on Fox. A big ball game here for Michigan State to try to rebound after 2 losses early here to, of course, James Madison, which helped propel them into the rankings, and Duke, which was not as close as the 9-point difference showed. They've since beat Butler and Akron State, games where they were shooting a little bit better, but this is still a team that's got big problems. Arizona, in its own right, has gone and beat Duke on the road and beat Belmont, which is a decent team, by about 32 points. So this is just a thriving Arizona Wildcat here team, and they've got 6 guys averaging double digits, which you never see double-digit figures shooting. They're a good team from 3, over 40%, 50% from the field. The Spartans are going to have a very difficult team here, but of course, billed as a top matchup. Our second NFL game will kick off at 4:30, of course, on CBS. The Cowboys hosting the Commanders. Dallas favored by 11. It's probably too low. Commanders took a horrible loss to the Giants last week, had 6 turnovers. Of course, they were already moving defensive pieces, as we know, at the trade deadline for contracts that they were not going to renew. Sitting at 4-7, just going to be a difficult time to beat the Cowboys on the road. We're just thumping not very good football teams. So presumably the good team is going to win here by quite a bit. But that is the 4:30 CBS game, the Dallas Cowboys. 5 o'clock, the Battle for Atlantis with our top teams will continue as well. 5:30, we will have number 23 USC hosting Seton Hall. 3-1 USC, number 4-0 Seton Hall at 5:30 on FS1. The old Pirates have had a great start under their coach there, Shaheen Holloway. Of course, he was involved in a handshake line scuffle the other day with a fellow colleague of his who's coaching at Wagner there. But if he's able to recover from that, he'll have to fist fight with the USC Trojans here. Of course, no Bronny James in the lineup at this particular point. Collier, the true freshman, has been the focal point of the offense for this team, which took a surprising loss to UC Irvine. They haven't been an awesome shooting team. They did beat Brown by 11 the other day, which they shot not great in either. 50% from 3, but 42% from the field, and just having a little bit of a rough time so far to start the season. But at the moment, they're ranked top 25 per the AP poll, and they'll be playing a decent Seton Hall team as well. Also at 5:30, VCU will be hosting Iowa State on ESPN2. The Cyclones are off to a 4-0 start, with VCU sitting at 3-1. Of course, the A-10 hoping to get multiple schools in after some struggles the past couple of seasons. They lost to McNeese State in the opener, though. That is not a great start, and Iowa State has not played a particularly difficult schedule at all either. 7:30, we will have more Battle for Atlantis to round out our quadruple header there. Starting then at 8 o'clock, we will have, let's backtrack for just a second here. We'll squeeze our 7:30 ESPN college football game in for the day. The Egg Bowl, 5-6 Mississippi State hosting number 12 Ole Miss at 9-2, as the Aggies are trying to make a bowl game. They've just fired Arnett, their coach, have an intern in there. And they're 10-point underdogs at home, but Jackson Dart and Quinshon Judkins sure look like they'll be able to do damage, especially Judkins now that he's healthy. Jackson Dart's played well the past few games, and Mississippi State could be in some trouble if they get pushed to 5-7. They're 1-6 in SEC play. Not very good. They might be able to move the ball on Ole Miss if they all of a sudden start throwing the ball again, but it's been just miserable there for that strong upper class team, which is terribly unfortunate. They beat Southern Miss last week. It was 41-20 as they moved into their kind of back end of the schedule cupcake game, but they didn't really throw the ball anymore. 12 for 27 for 144 and 2 touchdowns for Will Rogers, and they ran the ball over 40 times. So not much difference there. Just terribly unfortunate. But the Egg Bowl will be a 7:30 on ESPN. Then at 8 o'clock, we will have Virginia Tech at 3-1, hosting Boise State at 2-1 in college basketball again. And the old Hokies there not particularly favored to be a strong basketball team this year. Lost to South Carolina by 2 and don't have any strong victories at this particular point. Boise State will be lost at Clemson in a blowout loss. Hasn't played a particularly strong roster either, but that will be part of the ESPN events, Invitational 8. And then, of course, the back end of the NFL triple header will be tipping off. Seattle Seahawks hosting the 49ers on NBC. Niners favored by a touchdown. I don't know if Geno Smith is actually going to play in this football game. Kenneth Walker was hurt as well last week. It's possible they're both out and the Niners just roll in this one. If they play, they might just be banged up. It's kind of seems up in the air at the moment. Niners obviously looking much better with Brock Purdy under center there after the bye week, coming out and moving the ball more efficiently. So this could be another one where the better team comes out and shelves the team pushing for a playoff spot. But that is certainly on the radar there with the line sitting right at 7 that I see at the moment. And then a couple late night basketball games as well. The Vegas Showdown will have 3-1 Vanderbilt hosting 3-0 NC State on ESPN2, followed up at midnight with 2-1 Arizona State hosting 4-0 BYU. KenPom currently has BYU as the number 14 team in the country, and NC State down there at the 52nd, and the other two are much further down the rankings. So the top two teams aren't even playing each other, so we could have big big discrepancies in scores here, but these teams will be playing each other off to decent starts. NC State and Vandy, BYU and Arizona State doubleheader on ESPN2 as part of the Vegas Showdown. So a little bit lighter on the college basketball. Again, the Battle for Atlantis matchups are going to be huge. Texas A&M hosting Penn State at noon. Iowa, Oklahoma at 3 will be decent. Michigan State at Arizona at 4 will hopefully be okay. And just some matchups that could be good, or they could go the opposite direction, but certainly not a weak slate by any measure. Egg Bowl should hopefully be a interesting game, but it could also be very flat, just be a complete blowout. And the NFL games really could be the same. The lines are not particularly close on any of those. So college basketball might be the strength and competition there in the Battle for Atlantis tournament if you're looking for really good quality stuff moving forward. But we still have plenty of options throughout the day on Thanksgiving. Now, Black Friday, we get the full party platter. We have games of all the different varieties here. We've got NBA. We have 10 NBA games, and it's group play, so we get the special jerseys and the special courts, if you like those. I do. 2 of the games are on NBA TV and 2 on ESPN, so they're a little bit more accessible. We've got at least half a dozen college basketball top 25 teams in action, some of them playing a few of those cupcake teams, but some of the tournaments are heading into their final rounds. That's the highlight. They'll be running on ESPN2 for the most part for the good chunk of the day on Friday. We do have one big NFL game, and we have several college games to kind of spread it out across Friday and Saturday. So getting started at noon Eastern time here. Actually 11 a.m. college basketball fires up again. 8 p.m. for the 8 a.m. Pacific time. There's the P for those folks. So you can have sports literally the entire day. But we do have a slate starting at noon with college football. Some of the highlighted games will be number 13, Oklahoma, the Sooners, and 9-2 will be hosting TCU at 5-6. The Horny Frogs, of course, trying to make a bowl game a year after making the playoffs. It's been a struggle, several quarterbacks and several changes there for Gary Patterson in his second season. Oklahoma's favored by 10 points. They've had their struggles. They could still make the Big 12 Conference Championship game. So both of these teams are actually playing for stakes here. And this will be a nice big game. 63.5 over under here. Nice neuter to get kicking off. And could be some points. Could be some dramatics as Gary Patterson goes all out in the finale here on the road. Oklahoma, though, is favored by double digits. We also have Nebraska hosting Iowa, who's ranked 17th. Iowa locked into the Big Ten Conference Championship game. Nebraska has suffered some losses here, which have been unfortunate. 3 straight now to Michigan State, Maryland, and Wisconsin after looking a little bit more promising But hopefully we get a better year from Matt Rule's team. Still fighting for a bowl, though, favored by almost a field goal, 26.5 point over-under. Do you not just bet the over at some point? Or do you just always think we're going to be at like 13 points? I don't know. But CBS gets this wonderful bundle of joy here as you're eating leftovers on Turkey Day. Boston College will be hosting Miami on ABC at noon. 8 points going Miami's way. They are both making bowls, surprisingly. And 3-4 in ACC play for Boston. That is surprising after a coaching change and some rough years there. And Miami is also surprising at 2-5 in ACC play. Still better than last season, but struggling. Van Dyke, of course, having some problems there, but he's had some ups and some downs. He had a career game earlier this season, and they've made improvements, but still were not where they were hoping to be this year. And Boston College looking up. But that is in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts, ABC. Memphis will be at Temple. Memphis is no longer in the American Conference race, but they can put up a heck of a lot of points. Temple will not be going to a bowl game. They have 8 losses, 65 point over under and a hook. 11 points going Memphis's way. There could be a lot of points. Not sure it'll be super exciting, but we will have a lot of touchdowns in that one. Toledo's going to the MAC Conference Championship game. They're 10-1. They're on ESPNU, favored heavily over Central Michigan, who's hoping to go to a bowl game. They're sitting at 5-6. Also in action will be Akron hosting Ohio. Ohio's a good football team. Not going to the conference championship game, though, but they will be heavily favored over the 2-9 Zips on the CBS Sports Network. At 2 o'clock, we will head into a few college basketball games of note, at least. Number 5, UConn is hosting Manhattan on FS1 at 2 o'clock, looking like a team that could repeat as national champions. And ESPN Plus will squirrel away number 25, Mississippi State, hosting Nicholas as well, if you're interested in catching those, though you will not be the top of my list, though, as I'm keeping an eye on some of these football games just to see which of them stay interesting. Probably Oklahoma TCU in the early window for me, and kind of channel surfing around a little bit. 2:30 will be our first bigger NBA game. They kind of have the slot alone here. It's the Magic hosting the Celtics on NBA TV, if you're able to get a hold of that for, of course, group play here. Celtics have been in a lot of conversation recently. I haven't been able to catch as many games, but I will certainly have an eye on this one once it pops on. So we will check in on Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum there against a good opponent on the road. And I think some of these teams are liking playing for the tournament here and stakes in this mini tournament and record within the confines of the season. And of course, Orlando still trying to figure out some of the guard stuff, but has Wagner playing well there, and just a good team with a winning record that could possibly make the playoffs. That is awesome to see. Moving on, 3:30, we get one of the games I'm looking forward to the most this weekend, period. Number 23, Tulane is hosting UTSA. UTSA is 8-3 overall, but 7-0 in the American Conference, of course. Talk about them like every week. They have been a good football team. Perhaps I'm overvaluing them just a shade. I like Frank Harris. I like that offense. The defense hasn't quite been performing, I think, the level that they wish it was this season, but it's still a step up from where they've been last year. Tulane's been scraping by some rough football teams. They're still favored by 3.5 here at home with the 51.5 point over-under. Frank Harris had, 6 touchdowns and just a great offensive performance in what could be his last home game last week, the second most yardage in a game behind one of Jaden Daniels' performances this season at LSU. And he could have to do it again against Tulane to get the win here to move into the conference championship game for the American. SMU is the other one in the race who had to play neither of these teams. They'll have to survive Navy to remain undefeated. And of course, if they lose, they'll be weird tiebreakers involved to see which two teams between UTSA, Tulane, and SMU make the American Conference Championship game. But as it stands, it's a win and you're in between these two teams who are very good. UTSA was in the top 25 last year. They would have been in it again if they didn't have some problems, and Frank Harris was banged up a little bit earlier. They lost some non-conference games. But realistically, I think these are two top 40 teams at least, even if they aren't, even Tulane's got a number 23 number from the AP poll next to its name. I think these are two pretty good football teams, and just hoping for fireworks here a good American Conference Championship game, because we see a lot of blowouts once we get to our 10-game Conference Championship week, which would be next week, and good bowl projections for these two teams. We also have New Mexico hosting Utah State at 3:30. Utah State hoping for a bowl game on CBS Sports Network is a nice little channel flipper. And the next set of games is here at 4 o'clock. Now, Arkansas said it's going to keep its head coach here, Sam Pittman, for now at least. He seems like a great interview and understanding of today's college kids and college athletes in general. So it would be too bad if they let him go. But of course, performance has been poor the past couple of seasons, even though they've had one of the most difficult schedules. At some point, you have to win some games. And they'll be hosting Missouri in the top 10 now, number 9-2. Had a great season. This is on CBS. Mizzou's favored by over a touchdown, but Arkansas can presumably stay in here. If your kids love your coach, then they'll keep fighting for him here. Mizzou had to sneak by Florida last week, of course, but they played Georgia tight. They beat the life out of Tennessee. Solid wins over Kentucky and South Florida. And they managed that big win over Kansas State earlier in the season. This has just been a solid football team on both sides of the ball. This will be something worth channel flipping over to. Boise State's managed 6 wins at this point, and Air Force has fallen out of the Mountain West Conference Championship race, I believe. Well, both these teams are 5-2. I think they're still in it here. 4 o'clock FS1, they'll be playing each other. Boise's actually favored here. Can punch Air Force right out of it. So this will be a game for something in the Mountain West, which has not been particularly strong. And this could be kind of a slow plodding, slow in terms of pace, but quick in terms of how fast it goes with just running the football and running the clock out. But Boise State and Air Force in a maybe not entertaining game, maybe not a great game, but a competitive game at 4 o'clock on FS1. And then we will move to the college basketball side, where we do have number 6 Houston hosting Montana on ESPN+. They should easily win that one. And it was worth noting, St. Mary's has had a rough start. They're 2-3, but they're hosting Davidson, who's 3-2. Record's not great. Names are kind of known, but not Power 5 schools, but teams that could certainly, moving forward in the season, be NCAA tournament teams. So Davidson, St. Mary's on ESPN+ as well at 4 o'clock, as well as Houston hosting a Montana team there. Our one NFL game is at 3:30 on Amazon Prime. It's the, I guess it's technically the Thursday night game, but Prime's got it on Friday here because of rights and holidays, I suppose. But the Dolphins will be at the Jets, and the Jets have benched Zach Wilson, and they will be starting, Tim Boyle. That's who we're at now. I know they restructured the QB depth chart there. Will the defense be able to slow down the Dolphins and the offense be just productive enough to move the ball on the Fins? That's the real question there. Miami, I think, will win and probably cover this 9.5, although they've been playing some of these bad teams kind of close, within a touchdown or so. But 40.5 over under, 9.5 points is the spread there, and that's a 3:30 Amazon Prime game. Dolphins and Jets, that's certainly worth keeping an eye on in rotation there with Tulane, UTSA, Missouri, Arkansas, as far as I'm concerned, and probably the end of the Celtics Magic as that's going on there. Moving into some of the NBA games at 5:30, we start to get into more of that depth there. The Grizzlies are hosting the Suns on NBA TV. Of course, the Grizzlies now 3-10 and 0-6 at home, having plenty of problems. The Suns still not fully healthy, but that will be the 5 o'clock game. And we move into the rest here of the slate for those games at 7 o'clock, and the rest of the college football is at 7 o'clock as well. So you get a little bit of a break there. At 6 o'clock, Duke is hosting Southern Indiana on the ACC network. At 7 o'clock, Kentucky 16th is hosting Marshall on the SEC network, if you want to catch those. Probably outside of the tournaments that'll continue going on ESPN2 there, the CBS Sports Network is going to have 3-1 Ohio State hosting number 17 Alabama at 7 o'clock as well. The Tide still playing at a high pace and looking like a good basketball team that can certainly compete for the SEC. Ohio State, still not sure. Jury's a little out on that. They've struggled, and they're going to have all their all their hands full with the Alabama Crimson Tide rolling into town. But outside of the tournaments moving forward, that'll be the best matchup that we know for sure on the slate coming up for Black Friday. To round out college football, we have 2 7:30 games and an 8:30. Number 7, Texas, of course, 10-1, has to make it through Texas Tech to make it to the Big 12 Conference Championship game, and they're that close to being on the doorstep of the playoffs. Texas Tech 6-5, 5-3 in the Big 12. This is on ABC. Texas 12.5-point favorites right now. They've had their struggles this season, not just because they've had Quinn Ewers out for a while, and now they're starting running back Jonathan Brooks, and the backup looks solid as well. But they just don't always put teams away. They've won 3 straight now. They beat Iowa State by 10 last week and really should have had a couple more touchdowns on the board. TCU by 3, Kansas State by 3, Houston by 7, and they do have several blowouts in there. 21 points in the fourth quarter to beat Wyoming much earlier in the season. It was a different time. But this team is just not quite always operating on all cylinders. Texas Tech, on the other hand, has had problems earlier in the season. They've now won 3 straight. They beat TCU by 7, Kansas by 3 with a backup third stringer, second stringer, one of those stringers. And you see Central Florida by a point as well last week, a good offense there. So clearly Texas should be favored rightfully in this ball game, but don't count out Texas Tech to come in and ruin things as they manage to move the ball through the air effectively, regardless of who's quarterback there. Morton back under center. Been there for several weeks now. Not the starter to start the season, as Sherrill got hurt again. But they are bowl eligible, so they're not necessarily playing for high stakes here. They're already going to a bowl game, but they will love it if they can upset the Longhorns apple cart. 7:30, Michigan State's 4-7. They're hosting number 11 Penn State, who's 9-2 and favored by 3 touchdowns on the road, despite the fact that sometimes their offense just kind of poops itself. So that game will be on your televisions. A 47.5 over, or 42.5 point over under. I am wrong. That seems about where it should be right there for that one. 8:30, we have number 6 Oregon hosting number 16 Oregon State on Fox. This is such a big game that could have such an upsetting result and people might not be watching it. Oregon State could beat Oregon. I know we just assumed that the Ducks should have a rematch with Washington in the Pac-12 championship game. They should win. They'd be heavy favorites if they went and played again today because of how closely contested the game against the Huskies were and how their defense doesn't look so good now. But Oregon State, despite a number of flaws, is still a team that can play on both sides of the ball. You know, my phone's going off while I'm trying to record. That's just shows how little respect there is for this game. The Civil War, as they used to call it, I don't know what the name is now. I think they dropped the Civil War part. But still, Oregon could lose this football game, is the point. Oregon State has got DJ Uiagalelei back there, of course. He's been productive at times, although not a great quarterback, but a good quarterback, and certainly an upgrade from Chance Noland, who was back under center last season. They were in the mix with Washington in the weather game last week in the rain, and the Beavers can run the ball as well. They're 23rd in rushing yards. They're actually only 51st in passing, but they choose to not throw the ball as much. They have 36 points per game as a top 20 offense, and they only allow 20 per game, which is tied for 34th in the country, though they do give up some on the back end to some of the better teams. But still, they can play some offense, they can play some defense, they're good all the way around the ball. They're actually one of the better teams, I think, in the Pac-12 as far as totality on both sides of the football, and Oregon might be the best in the conference. So this game in Eugene, in Austin Stadium. I've been to several Pac-12 stadiums, but I have not been to this one. So this will be a big game. Don't forget that. UTSA and Tulane at 3:30 on ABC, and Fox 8:30, Oregon State. No sleeper games here on Black Friday in college football. The NBA will be tipping off Rockets Nuggets at 8 o'clock, as well as Bucks Wizards, which is not quite as exciting. Timberwolves Kings as well, so a couple of good games there. The Rockets at 6-6, and great young players coming along, looking like a very competent team there after a coaching change. The Nuggets, of course, still a powerhouse, 10-4 right now, 3-4 on the road though. just to keep that in mind. But Rockets, Nuggets, and then Timberwolves at 10-3, 6-0 at home, hosting the Kings are two excellent NBA games, although they'll be League Pass or local, not on national television. ESPN, though, at 10 o'clock, will have the Warriors hosting the Spurs if you want to keep an eye out for Wembanyama. The Warriors are having some scoring problems outside of Steph Curry there, and they'll look to rebound at home. And then at 10:30, the last game on the slate there for the NBA, will have Clippers hosting the Pelicans. Clips 5-7, 4-1 at home, though. Pelicans 7-7 overall. Both teams having some struggles in the season so far. College basketball, last two games of note, both at 9 o'clock. The Big Ten Network will have Illinois hosting Western Illinois. Team just fell out of the top 25, did the Illini, and should be back in and out of it probably throughout the rest of the season. And Santa Clara hosting Oregon. The Ducks will field another decent team this year. They'll be battling a 5-0 Santa Clara team here in the Emerald Coast Classic. And the Broncos don't have any big wins to their name. They did beat Stanford on the road, though, so it's not a complete whiff there as far as schedule. So keep an eye on that one late. So again, keep an eye on the Vegas Showdown, the ESPN Invitationals, the tournaments there on ESPN2 and ESPNU going out through the day. If you're a college basketball fan, those will be the highlights. Also, Alabama, Ohio State at 7 o'clock is probably the top billing that we know for sure as far as matchups. Our NFL game at 3:30 between the Dolphins and the Jets, if that's an intriguing matchup. And then we do have a couple good games, at least, in college football. Spattering, if I do say myself. I do think Oklahoma, TCU, Nebraska, Iowa, Boston College, Miami, even maybe Temple and Memphis at noon will be interesting. Tulane at UTSA at 3:30 will be a highlight, as will the 7 o'clock. 7:30 Texas Tech, and 8:30 Oregon State, with playoff potential on the line there for those teams, and play-in games for the NBA mixed in throughout the day and afternoon, with one of the highlights of 2:30 Celtics Magic, and a doubleheader on ESPN, a 7:30 Knicks Heat, and a 10 o'clock Warriors Spurs game on the schedule as well. So this Saturday, for the most part, is going to set up for college football per usual, the last normal week of the regular season before we head into conference championship weekend next week with our 10 games for our 10 conference championships before we head into the bowl scramble and the playoffs, of course. Now, we do have 0 NFL games, of course, heading into Sunday, the only day that we won't have a game. Thursday, Friday, Sunday, and Monday are our NFL games, which is very exciting. We do have 6 NBA games starting at 5 o'clock, and we do have a very, very light college basketball schedule with all the games that are going on. So we will have these tournaments still going on, some of the lighter, lower level tournaments, I would say, going on throughout the day on Saturday. We do have the Emerald Coast Classic, which is what Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon will be playing in. Now, Santa Clara, Western Michigan, and a few others are involved with that, Mercer. So some of those matchups will be continuing. I'm not sure after Ohio State and Alabama the night previous that we'll see another big matchup unless Oregon is matched up with one of those two. And those will be on the ESPN networks. Sometime starting around, I believe, noon to afternoon. We also have the NASU Championship, which is Kansas City, Brown, Delaware, Middle Tennessee. I think the highest profile team might be Ohio or George Washington. I imagine not a lot of eyes will be on those games. And then we have the Acrisure Invitational, which Michigan State and Arizona are a part of. But once those two play and they're paired off with other teams, I mean, Hawaii or Arkansas State are the biggest names. So it's entirely possible that the conference tournaments feature no big major matchups in the Emerald Classic, the Acrisure, or the Baha Mar Hoops Nessar Championship game. So just to note that there will be college basketball games, probably not any high profile that'll overtake your TV for some of the college football games in exchange. Just a few matchups of note. There is St. John's taking on Holy Cross. St. John's, of course, reloading under Rick Pitino there, and they've had some issues. Don't measure out with the metrics particularly well, but he is reloading there. They're 3-2. That's at 7 o'clock on FS2. Not to jump ahead in the viewing guide here. Also at 7 o'clock is San Diego State hosting Cal, and no network for that one yet, and Maryland hosting South Alabama on the Big Ten Network. Maryland 2-3 already in the season. A rough start there for that team. So those are three of the highlights of college basketball. Bradley undefeated so far, hosting Vermont at 5-1 at 8 o'clock on ESPN Plus as well. So those games in the evening will be on TV. But again, no NFL, of course, and college basketball kind of off the radar. So we focus on college football, and we'll touch note on the handful of NBA games on the slate here. So starting at noon on this Saturday, November 25th, your top watch in the noon window is obviously going to be number 3 Michigan hosting number 2 Ohio State on Fox. And the window is very much set up for this big game. We're kind of shallow outside of that. Your top channel flippers are number 14 LSU hosting Texas A&M on ESPN. If this is a good game, it'll be a shame that it's opposite Michigan, Ohio State, but it'll be a good alternative as Jaden Daniels tries to go for the Heisman. They clearly left him in the game last week to try and open up the door for that and to leave it open. Texas A&M is going to be the best defensive front, probably still the best, one of the best in the country, along with Georgia's honestly not quite there this year, but along with Alabama, Ohio State, and some of the Big Ten teams in the mix, obviously. But Texas A&M is right up there with that top recruiting class from last year. A lot of those guys developing into sophomores, and Jaden Daniels would really have to fight for it. It could be a really good ball game. These two have taken turns really disrupting each other's seasons as the last game on the slate the last few years. So this will be another barn burner if it holds true to form. But that one will be on ESPN as the top channel flipper. And then I do have Louisville, of course, hosting Kentucky in that rivalry. Kentucky sucked recently. They're 6-5 at the moment, so they'll obviously be making a bowl game, but it's been a struggle season for them. In Louisville, still in the mix for the playoffs, obviously. They can certainly win the ACC with one loss to the name over Florida State, but they're just going to have to fist fight to even be in the conversation. It's going to be a struggle, but they're favored by a touchdown against Kentucky on ABC. Those are the top channel flippers again. Of note, SMU will be hosting Navy. They need to win to make it to the American Conference Championship game. If they lose, I'm not sure how the math works out, but they're 9-2, 7-0 overall, favored by 18 against Navy, who's 5-5, trying to make a bowl game. Obviously, they'll play Army next week in their rivalry game. That's on ESPN2. And other than that, we have Central Florida and Houston playing each other. Central Florida still trying to make a bowl game, so they're on bowl watch. Officially, Houston is out of it, but the Knights can certainly put up some points, and they're an enjoyable team to watch more times than not. And then Kent State's had a rough season, of course, lost their head coach to Deion Sanders' staff there at Colorado, lost a ton of guys to the transfer portal, been a rough season, and now they're huge underdogs to Northern Illinois, who's looking to get win number 6 and get bowl eligible as well. So that's it. There's really only 6 games worth even speaking out loud. And of course, Ohio State, Michigan, the main ones there. Field goal favorites, depending on where you look, is Michigan at home with a 46.5 over-under. I believe I got that at 47.5. So I'm glad I bet that, quite frankly. I'm not sure that there'll be a lot of points in this game. I went on a mini rant on Jim Harbaugh and how this Michigan team isn't quite looking right or playing up to its ability on the last podcast. And Ohio State, I've been railing on McCord for this entire season. I believe they're playing more to his ability now and what he's able to do. Travion Henderson is looking like the back we've all expected for the past few years. Of course, they have a fleet of options there at Ohio State, but he's truly a difference maker, and he's been missed when he's hurt. Ohio State appears to be healthy now, all the wide receivers, Harrison Jr., and Mbuka, and they seem like they're ready to go. That defensive front looks better than last year. I expect them to give Michigan problems. Michigan is not running the football the same way. Of course, we say that coming off of the Penn State game 2 weeks ago, in which they just crammed it down Penn State's throat. But I think they're going to have some problems against Ohio State. And to say that they've just been holding McCarthy back and holding plays in the chamber, I think that that's been the case. But I also think you don't hold things back when Maryland is one bad ball, bounce the ball away from beating you. So I think they do have problems. I think they'll pull some things out. Ohio State will do the same thing. There's tons of numbers out there. If you've obviously paying attention to other sports stuff out there, there's tons of coverage on just strictly this game moving forward this week, even with teams like Florida State, Washington, and Oregon genuinely facing some possible good competition and possibly having playoff spots disrupted or lost. But this game, obviously, the big one on the slate. And I don't know what to do with this for sure. I've gone with Michigan. They were my preseason pick to win it, which means they win this one. But that was with anticipation that Michigan was still able to move the ball effectively enough. And J.J. McCarthy was able to run, and I do say run, and throw the football and keep Ohio State off balance. Ohio State was just shockingly awful on defense last year, and it's just not going to be the same. Now, Penn State seems to have made the same mistake. Michigan was able to run the ball the same way on them, not for 400 yards this way, but for 30-plus plays. I just don't think it's going to be the same way against Ohio State. And on the other side of things, I think Ohio State's offense, although the quarterback isn't as effective, I think the running back position there with TreVeyon Henderson and some of those receivers is very, very good. And although the Wolverines' defense has been very sufficient at what they're doing, I just think that's a lot of weapons to cover up. Marvin Harris has been the focal point, and some of those other receivers may have to actually catch footballs. I think McCord can get it there, but I'm still going with Michigan in this game, although some of the discussions in their deficiencies have made me wonder if Ohio State is going to come in there and beat them. But this could be a one bounce of the ball difference. I think picking either side is just flipping a coin at this particular point. I'm very excited for this game. I'm not necessarily nervous, but Michigan should be. You lose this, you have no strong schedule to look at. You have a coach that's been suspended twice for violations that, sure, everyone commits, but nobody gets caught doing except for you. And that's not great. So a one-loss Ohio State certainly still has an opportunity to make the playoffs. A one-loss Michigan certainly does not. Moving on to the afternoon slate of games, I've got two top watches, so you might just have to run the rails between the two of them if you don't have multiple TVs like I do. I understand. Spoiled over here. Doing a lot. Washington hosting Washington State at 4 o'clock. Oklahoma State hosting BYU at 3:30. They're both going to be clear favorites. One of them has the playoffs on the line, and one of them has an opportunity to make its conference championship game. So obviously, Washington would probably be the prime view here. However, Oklahoma State hosting BYU. The Cougars trying to make a bowl game. They've been playing a backup quarterback. They've had a hell of a lot of problems this year. Not really awesome at very many things, just average to below average. They're 2-6 overall in conference play, 5-6 overall. This is on ABC. Oklahoma State 17-point favorites here. They're 8-3 overall, and they've just been popping off the page since the bye week quarterback change. Still have one of the most statistically best running backs in the country here, who's done a great job running the football all over the board. And Ollie Gordon here, over 1,400 yards, 6.7 yards per carry, over 200 in volume on the season, and 15 touchdowns overall. He is just a monster. Doesn't do anything in the pass game, but just a monster running back. The quarterback position, really, Bowman's been doing just fine. He has almost 2,500 yards passing, but less than 60%, 6.8 yards per attempt, 10 touchdowns, 9 picks. He doesn't run the ball like at all. So quarterback position is where they're susceptible, just to put something out there. And that's kind of why Oklahoma State, I think, is not like 20-something point favorites in this particular game. Washington, of course, the defense has problems. They still have a couple big playmakers out there. They're playing games close. Is Penix hurt? What is going on? Well, they're 16.5-point favorites in the Apple Cup with a 68.5-point over-under, which is huge. The weather game, of course, played close, 22-20 against Oregon State. They beat Utah by 7 previous to that, USC by 10, Stanford by 9, Arizona State by 8, and a pick six was needed in that game. Oregon by 3, Arizona by 7. They beat Cal in a 59-32 shootout there. So it has not always been a clean trip for Washington. It's really been holding on to the handrails all the way through. Penix, though, is over 3,600 yards. He'll go past 3,700 yards on the season if he's able to hang in there. 66% completion percentage and just a boatload of touchdowns. He's currently sitting at 7 picks and a solid QBR, if we want to use that as a metric. That doesn't account for quality of opponents in there and some of the easier teams he's played. But at the same time, they're not really given credit for the difficult resume they've played. After all, Oregon State, Utah, USC, Oregon, Arizona, and Boise State, who could get to 7 wins this week, is not. That's still more decent wins or above, 500 win teams, bowl eligible teams than like anyone else in the running for playoffs here. Pretty much more than Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, and Ohio State, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, Stanford, Arizona State, Tulsa, Michigan State, Cal aren't making bowls, but they've still played 6 bowl eligible teams. Without going back through them, I would say they've got strength, the best resume out of anyone, and that just isn't discussed enough. Washington State has certainly had its issues this season. They're fighting just to make a bowl game. They're 5-6 right now. That was not where they expected to be by any stretch. They did manage to win last week against Colorado in a 56-14 blowout, but that was on the heels of a 6-game skid. Ooh boy, say that 5 times fast. And that includes losses to Arizona State, Stanford, and Cal. All opportunities for wins if this was a halfway decent football team. And I still think they have their strengths, but I think they have some real problems as well. Washington will have to fend them off in order to advance undefeated to the Pac-12 Conference Championship game. One of the channel flipping games I have here is UNLV hosting San Jose State at 3 o'clock as we move on to the next section here. UNLV is 9-2 now. They're in the Mountain West Conference Championship game with a 6-1 record. San Jose State will also be in a bowl game, which is a rarity for this program. The Rebels are about a field goal favorite right now. They'll be playing either Air Force or Boise State, who are playing each other in the conference championship. San Jose State is actually still in the mix as well. I'm not sure what the tiebreakers look like for this, but San Jose State isn't completely out of it, so they'll be fighting the Rebels. They've actually won 5 straight games over San Diego State, Fresno State, Hawaii, Utah State, and New Mexico in order to get to this point, and they've won all of them pretty handily. They've got a good thing going here with the ground game. They've got a decent quarterback here as well with Xavier Cordelio, another name I will not pronounce correctly ever either. He doesn't turn the ball over very much. Robinson is a great running back, 6.8 yards per carry. Connolly is averaging 6.9 yards per carry. Robinson has 16 touchdowns on the ground and 8 for Connolly, so just a great duo there in the backfield. The defense has been doing an okay job, but is probably the weakness on that particular football team. The Rebels have won 3 straight over Air Force and Wyoming, 2 of those bodies that have been very important, as well as New Mexico, and has a very good football team as well. This will be a really great battle. My top small screen starlet. Couple teams here, 2 great ground games as well. Jaden Thomas has 9 rushing touchdowns. Javion Lester, 9 touchdowns. And Vincent Davis, 5 touchdowns. 33 total on the ground for the team for UNLV, which will also be around the football quite a bit. And just a great little game nestled in there in the 3 o'clock slot and Allegiant Stadium, Las Vegas. I don't have a network for this one yet, but if you're able to watch it, that might be a game that's worth checking out, as some of these others could possibly get out of hand. If Washington's able to get a handle on things, if Oklahoma State's able to get a handle on things, if the next one on this list, the 3:30 Auburn hosting Alabama, is able to get a handle on things, the defense of Alabama has been a solid group. 48.5 point over-under with a 14.5 point favorite going Alabama's way. Not a lot of points expected. Auburn lost to New Mexico resoundingly last week. They'd won 3 straight previous to that against Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, and Arkansas. It's possible none of those teams go to bowls. They had a 4 straight game losing streak to LSU, Georgia, Texas A&M, and Mississippi at one point. It's possible that they will end the season going into a bowl with 0 wins over teams with a winning record. The offense has been horrific. It's just a dumpster fire. They're 121st in passing yards, 69th in points scored. The ground game is top 25, but something's got to get working. It's in part because the quarterbacks are scrambling all over the place and running due to the design, which is the same thing that's happening for the Crimson Tide on their end as well. Building the offense around Milroe, still not running the ball super effectively, but this is still a good defensive squad, so I don't expect to see a whole lot of points in this one, but Alabama expected to certainly cover 2 touchdowns in this one. I also have the 3:30 Arizona State hosting Arizona as well. The Wildcats bear down, have a chance to move to 7-2 in conference play and 9-3 overall. Just a phenomenal turnaround from the dumpster fire this team was not that long ago with their new quarterback, Noah Fifta, under center there. He'll pass 2,000 yards passing this upcoming week. Still a great receiver there, and McMillan. He's expected to go over 1,000 yards and probably 10 touchdowns and 70 catches this upcoming week. Arizona State's been fighting. They're actually 2-6 in Pac-12 play, 3-8 overall, in a great first year for Dillingham, who's still under 40 as a coach. They're only 10.5 point underdogs in this particular game. They are 2-2 in their last 4 with wins over UCLA and Washington State. That's something. Their blowout losses to Utah and Oregon in the mix as well. But this is a team that's starting to look on the up and up, despite a tough recruiting time there due to violations from Herm Edwards' time there. This could be a fun one just because they are so well coached. And this is on the Pac-12 network, I'm afraid. No, this is on ESPN. Oh, thank God. Have an opportunity to actually flip to it, watch it on the quad box on YouTube TV. So that's fantastic to have that one. Arizona and Arizona State. Other games of note, Utah will be hosting Colorado at 3 o'clock. It is terribly unfortunate that this isn't of bigger notice. Pac-12 will have this one, so not a lot of people will get an opportunity to see Sadir Sanders in his final game here this season with Colorado, and he'll presumably go to the draft. 27 touchdowns passing, 3 picks, 3,200 yards this year. I'm going to assume he doesn't sit out, but I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that. They may say he's banged up or whatever, and I'm sure he is. Lots of guys are banged up, but it's just not a good showing to me to just not even bother throwing a few balls out there, even if he is getting hit and sacked. Like, it's up to you to protect your son and quarterback. But I digress. Utah's offense has obviously been a problem. They've done a good job moving the ball against bad teams, doing enough because they're well coached. They'll have an opportunity to hit 8-4. Cam Rising has said he's going to come back next year. We'll see. It's possible that this entire offense could return as well. That would really be something, as this unit could progress and grow together. But that is in the future. That is not this upcoming Saturday. Tennessee will be hosting Vanderbilt as well. Vandy's had just a tough season after beating Florida last year and Kentucky. They're winless in the SEC, 2-9, underdogs by almost 4 scores to a Tennessee team that's 3-4 in the SEC, 7-4 overall. They've lost 3 of their past 5. They've beaten nobody they beat Texas A&M, Kentucky, UTSA, but it's not been a great time for the Vols. We also have UTEP hosting Liberty at 3:30. Liberty's still undefeated, otherwise wouldn't be on this list. CBS Sports Network. 11-0 are the Flames, 16.5 point favorites there. Rutgers will be hosting Maryland at 3:30 as well on the Big Ten Network. Both teams 6-5. Maryland's favored by a point on the road. Not sure about that. Very up and down year for Tulia Tagovailoa. 20 touchdowns, 10 picks, over 3,000 yards though, and it's considered a successful season for Rutgers whenever they can make a bowl. ESPN2 will have the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers hosting James Madison at 3:30. James Madison, favored on the road, of course, took their first loss of the season last week against Appalachian State. They've been denied an opportunity to play in the Sun Belt Conference Championship or a bowl game. I mean, maybe there's still a chance it gets overturned. The NCAA pretty much does whatever the hell it wants. So maybe that still happens. I believe James Madison said they won't sue. We'll see. If that's the case, this will be the last game of the year. Chanticleers have been winning even without Grayson McCallum there, who's really been the top player for this ball club. But they've won. They lost the last one, but they won 5 straight previous to that. And the backup quarterback, not quite as good, but still a good program, good coached program there. This will be a decent game between 2 non-Power 5 teams. Same thing at 4 o'clock, New Mexico hosting Jacksonville State. New Mexico State is in the Conference USA Championship. Jacksonville State can still make it too. They're 8-3, 6-1 in conference play, while New Mexico State's 9-3, 6-1 in conference play, and Jacksonville State is favored on the road and La Cruz. Imagine that. This will be another one. This is on ESPN Plus, though, buried there on the premium network. Bull Watch. So the 1 o'clock, Florida Atlantic will be heading to Rice. The Owls are out of it. Rice, I believe JT Daniels will be healthy for this one on his 4th program. Former National Gatorade Player of the Year for men. Of course, they pick a male and female athlete. So he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated back when he was in high school. I remember that issue coming to my mailbox. And rough college career. But he's been doing some things there for Rice. It'd be nice if their season, Rice, it would be nice. It'd be nice if their season didn't quite come to an end yet, but they do have to beat Florida Atlantic in order to continue it. That's ESPN Plus at 1 o'clock. At 2, Wake Forest season is over, but they are playing at Syracuse in the Carrier Dome. The Qs have been just devastated by injuries. They can still make a bowl game. They're 1-6 in conference play. This is on the CW network. They're favored by a field goal. Excuse me, it's the JMA Wireless Dome now. That's what it's called. Not quite as exciting. The Louisiana Raging Cajuns can make a bowl if they beat Louisiana Monroe at 3 o'clock on ESPN Plus. They are favored to do so. Illinois is hosting Northwestern at 3:30. This is on the Big Ten Network. Illinois still not bowl eligible, but they can get there if they beat Northwestern. The Wildcats are already going to a bowl game. Illinois favored. This will be a gross game. Minnesota 5-6, Wisconsin 6-5, also 3:30. FS1, Wisconsin favored to prevent the Gophers from making it there. Virginia hosting Virginia Tech. The Hokies still need one more win, and Virginia's been very feisty. Field goal going Virginia Tech's way right now on the ACC network. Same time, Marshall hosting Arkansas State. Arkansas State already going to a bowl game. Marshall slid. They need to win this one. They're favored by a couple. Evening slate, your top watch. I have Florida hosting Florida State. We could have makeshift offensive lines and backup quarterbacks in this one on ESPN. It will be a crapshoot. 50.5 point over-under, 6.5 going Florida State's way on the road. Florida has had problems, I mean, from a coaching perspective, as in what are you doing? What is this play call? How are you managing the clock? Which has been a tough go with Billy Napier in year 2. It's really a shame to see those kind of things and your coach just screwing up what you're doing on the field. And they've managed to lose 4 straight, including a tough one against Missouri last week that they seemingly had just about sewed up, but they allowed Missouri to complete like a 4th and 17, was it, to eventually get in a field goal range. Just absolutely fell apart after a great offensive drive. They still have great skill guys there. The backup quarterback looked pretty solid, getting them into position to kick a game-winning field goal, and he probably could have maybe got them into the end zone if they allowed him to, rather than handing the ball off a few times and setting up for a potential game-winning field goal. Again, I think there was too much time to do that, but his name is Max Brown, 4 for 5 for 56 yards. 7 scrambles accredited for 42 yards, including a 27-yard scamper there. I thought he looked okay. But again, we're going to have some offensive linemen out for this one. The defense gives up points. It could be a tough time for the Gators. Florida State's got their backup quarterback in after the horrible loss of Jordan Travis. So their guys played some time last season and some garbage time this year. So he's had an opportunity to get in there. But Tate Rodemaker did not look great last week. 217 yards and 2 touchdowns, 13 for 23, but it was against North Alabama, which is not a good football team. And so I don't know. He's played more time. He seems to have a little bit more shine on him. Max Brown looked better to me in limited time against better competition last week. But Florida's at home. Offensive lines could be all messed up. Florida's defense isn't great. Florida State's defensive line is good, but I think you can move the ball on the back end. Both quarterbacks could have to scramble around quite a bit. And this could be a wild one out there in Gainesville. And it could definitely impact the college football playoff. Even if they win the ACC championship, one loss could really hurt Florida State and prevent them from making it in. Florida also is 5-6. They need a win to make a bowl game. That would be bad for Billy Napier, not making a bowl. But FSU by less than a touchdown in the Swamp. Your channel flippers on this one in your evening slate. I have Georgia Tech hosting Georgia. This is the ABC game at 7:30. Georgia Tech is making a bowl game. They have Haynes King, former Texas A&M kid, of course. They can throw the ball a bit. They can create a pass rush, I think, even though the numbers don't necessarily support it. It seems like they can get after the quarterback when you're watching it. They've won 5 of the past 7. They beat Syracuse last week. Now, Georgia still favored massively in this one. Don't expect anything different. 24 points on the road. And they've rolled through everyone, so there's no reason to think it's going to be a ball game. Just might check it out. Just might see if Georgia Tech can do anything. Otherwise, it'll be off your TV pretty quickly there. Now, South Carolina's 5-6. They need a win to make a bowl. They're playing the team they dusted by 50 points last week, or 50 points last year. They put on Clemson in a surprise blowout victory. 24th ranked, the Clemson Tigers have made it back in the polls. They're 7-4. Have they looked better as the season's gone on? Honestly, no. They still turn the ball over too much. They still have problems in the red zone. Clay Klubnik still has problems. Don't know what the coaching is sometimes on either side of the ball. They don't have a lot of skilled players on the offensive side that you're afraid of. The running back, Shipley and Maffa are great, but Maffa still fumbles. Not a lot's changed, and that's why they're 7-4 overall, and don't have a great record in the ACC. Spencer Rattler's actually got 19 touchdowns, 7 picks, 3,000 yards passing. He's got a great touchdown there in Leggett, who's got over 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. I don't think South Carolina can hang, but Clemson's only favored by a touchdown on the road here at 7:30 on the SEC network. Kansas State is hosting Iowa State. Both teams going to bowls already. Kansas State has a nice 19 next to their name. This is on Fox at 8 o'clock. Kansas State favored by almost 10 points and a rather low 47.5. Thought process is Iowa State's probably just going to get stifled out of this one defensively, and that is probably going to be the case, but it could be interesting. Could be interesting in the meantime. NC State is hosting North Carolina in the rivalry here. Both 8-3. NC State's ranked, though, and North Carolina's not. This is the ACC network, 8 o'clocker. North Carolina favored on the road by 2.5, 55.5 point over-under. It's possible this is the last time you see Drake May if he does not play in the bowl game. North Carolina's had some struggles here. They've lost 3 of the past 5, and one of their wins was Campbell in an overtime win over Duke. So it's been tough sledding all the way around for this team. Be nice for them to beat NC State, just having that nice juice for Drake May. But it's offense and defense here. Can North Carolina's offense and their skill guys get going against North Carolina? It's built-in defense here, but trouble moving the football. That's what the question is going to be in this one. Notable games in the evening slate. I have Stanford hosting Notre Dame. You know, I like my Stanford Cardinals despite the fact they get beat up. If Ashton Daniels can get in the mix there, which is not very often, then he can keep things interesting. Sam Hartman, last game for Notre Dame there, was ranked 18th. Pac-12 Network will have this at 7 o'clock. Notre Dame favored by a whole lot. Baylor might be looking for a new coach, but they're hosting West Virginia, who can move to a surprising 8 wins. This is on FS1 at 7 o'clock, just noting that one. Texas State has got a good quarterback there, hosting South Alabama. These are a couple 6-5 teams on the NFL Network at 7 o'clock. Not a bad non-Power 5 matchup. Cincinnati's not good. Kansas might be playing a third-string quarterback. This might be garbage, but Kansas has an opportunity to move to 8 wins. They might have more wins than Clemson by the time the season's done with. Favored by less than a touchdown on the road here, 7:30 ESPN2. It would sure as hell be nice if we saw Daniels again there at quarterback. I don't know if that's going to happen again this season, ever, this upcoming weekend. But final game of the regular season, they'll be playing Cincinnati on the road. Natty not good. We know where these teams are going. One to a bowl, one not. No big stakes here, but just a notable game there. Bowl watch, I got one other one here. Just South Florida hosting Charlotte. It's been a tough season for Charlotte, although they have a very interesting head coach there. But the Bulls, after 2 wins last season, need a win to move to 6-6 to make a bowl game. And they have a very interesting young quarterback there that can Scooby-Doo a bit. He has some bad throwing habits, but that's about what you'd expect from a kid that went to school at this level and is on a rebuilding program and that talent. But Bruce Brown, I believe it is, Byron Brown, has been a solid freshman quarterback for them and maybe has a bright future for that team. It'd be nice to see him in a bowl game against some different competition and extending their season, though. Before bridging the evening and late night games, the last group here, the NBA games start at 5 and run through late night. At 5 o'clock, the Thunder are hosting the Sixers. That'll be a great game. Again, none of these are nationally broadcast. They're local or league pass, but that'll be an excellent one, of course. Maxey doing a phenomenal job. Addition by subtraction with the James Harden situation there. The Thunder, we know the development that's going on there with Chet Holmgren, but Thunder hosting the Sixers at 5 o'clock. That is a great game to kind of flip on there if you have the opportunity to do so, as some of the evening, late afternoon games are kind of finishing up there. We're about to dig into the full evening slate. The Nets are hosting the Heat at 6 o'clock. Again, kind of a plotting game there. Wizards are hosting the Hawks at 7. Cavs hosting the Lakers at 7:30. The Lakers have won, what are we at, 5, 6? A good chunk of their last few games here, and they're looking pretty strong, although LeBron's having to play a whole lot of minutes. Cavaliers struggling just a touch, but Donovan Mitchell's been banged up. That could still be an interesting game. And then the late night, we have 9:30, Jazz hosting Pelicans, and then we have the Clippers on again late at 10:30. This is on NBA TV. Clippers will be hosting the Mavs if you want to check in on what Luka is doing. So just to note those games there. So the late night for college football will be Nevada, who struggled this year at 2-9, hosting Wyoming at 7-4. 9 o'clock, CBS Sports Network. The Cowboys, great team, favored by double digits in a low-scoring affair there. UCLA will be hosting Cal on ESPN at 10:30. Kind of a big game. Of course, lots of buzz around Chip Kelly. Is he going to be dropped or not from that school? Fired. Lots of quarterback problems. Is Gabbert still going to be the quarterback? Is Devontae Moore going to be ready to go there at quarterback? Is there a possibility that he transfers out? What's going on there? But they have an opportunity to get to the 8th win despite all the turmoil and quarterback problems there. Cal looking for a bowl. They're 5-6, and they can put up a couple points, but they got a tough defense in the Bruins, and they're underdogs by 8.5 at the moment that I see. So that's actually a decent game. Also at 10:30, FS1. Final Brady Hoke game for San Diego State. They're 3-8. They're hosting Fresno, who's 8-3. Only 5-point favorites on the road there. It's been some tough sledding for Fresno State, who's 4-3 in the Mountain West. And finally, at 11 o'clock, Colorado State's looking for a bowl. They're 5-6. They'll have to beat 4-8 Hawaii to do that. The Rainbow Warriors playing their 13th game of the season. Did you know they play 13 games to help offset travel costs? I did not realize that. I knew they played 13 games. I didn't know why. Had to do the old Google machine to figure that out, but the NCAA has allowed it in order to offset all their massive travel costs every time they do an away game. So a nice fun fact for you there. So my final watch guide here, my categories: must watch, Ohio State, Michigan, of course. Biggest impact should be entertaining, competitive, and good football, I hope. My audible: I have UNLV hosting San Jose State in the afternoon window. A lot of these games, again, Oklahoma State at home against BYU could be interesting, or Oklahoma State could take care of business. Washington hosting Washington State could be great, or Washington could steadily pull away in that game. We could have Alabama slowly taking care of Auburn in a defensive battle, but UNLV and San Jose State, although not as high level competition. Should be competitive and entertaining and kind of have stakes for San Jose State if they manage to win. I believe they can still make the Mountain West game there. So check in. Stanford hosting Notre Dame, and I slipped Central Florida hosting Houston into that. You're going to be keeping an eye on the ones that matter. But I like Stanford's quarterback there, of course. Will they keep things interesting with Notre Dame? Probably not. But don't put that past your purview if the quarterback gets going there for Stanford. Again, it's just a check, just a quick check-in. Quick check-in there on how Notre Dame's doing, as they're not exactly the most explosive offense, but they might just mull over Stanford in the trenches. And UCF can still put up points. Houston might be able to, too. We could have a really interesting ball game there. Small screen starlets. Again, we have some options, but Coastal Carolina hosting James Madison. Even though we may not have any actual stakes here, this may be the best two-team combination that we have going on. Underrated. LSU and Texas A&M, man. I mean, realistically, when you got Michigan-Ohio State game goes to ads, I mean, flip over to LSU, Texas A&M. That is going to be a good football game. It's possible Texas A&M really just rolls over LSU's offensive line, and maybe they're not able to move the ball, so it could get ugly. That's the worst case. Best case scenario, you get a few plays from Texas A&M on LSU's defense. LSU, forces Jaden Daniels to make some plays, dodging tacklers and sacks, and he moves against a really good defense. It could be one of the more entertaining games of the entire day. And your late night snack is going to be Cal and UCLA. UCLA kind of fighting for its coach, I would hope, and Cal hoping for a bowl game there. So those are your watch categories and your watches overall on Saturday. Let's roll into Sunday real quick. We don't usually go through your college football slate on Sunday because I usually do a little write-up, make my picks on that on michaelwelch.com. So feel free to check out that little sucker. I'm not too bad at picking my games here. We have no college football Sunday. We have 11 NFL games. 6 in the 1 o'clock window, 4 in the afternoon, and of course, 1 Sunday night football game. We have maybe a couple college basketball games of interest and 8 NBA games in action. So the ESPN Events Invitational will pick up at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPNU, and they will play at least a couple rounds going. Boise State, Butler, Florida Atlantic, Iowa State, Penn State, Texas A&M, VCU, Virginia Tech are the participants there in what I would consider a second-tier tournament. Teams teams that could be in the NCAA tournament, but not heavy hitters. And that starts right at 10:30 on Sunday, so you can get going right away with that. The Nassar Championship Tournament final there is at 11 a.m. as well. So you can actually double fist your games if you want early on. The 1 o'clock slate for the NFL will then open up, and we have a pretty rough 6-game sled here. Falcons hosting the Saints, division on the line down further here. Panthers pretty much out of it. Buccaneers going to have a tough time. Neither of these teams are exciting to watch, but Atlanta favored by a point here in this one. Not excited about the quarterback situation either side. Desmond Ridder back in, and I think Jameis Winston still in for the Saints, if I'm not mistaken. Bengals hosting Steelers. Steelers favored on the road now that Burrow is out, and that sounds about right. Titans at 3-7 hosting the Panthers. That's going to be gross. Colts are sitting at 500 hosting the Buccaneers. Giants hosting the Patriots, losing records there. Texans hosting the Jags is a top 5 game of the week for me, but we look at what else is on. I love CJ Stroud. I think this will be a great game and a great challenge taking on Jacksonville's offense, which has been kind of sputtering, but the defense certainly for this young quarterback. Jacksonville's favored by a couple points in this one. So that 1 o'clock slate is going to be brutal, but that's next up on the watch calendar. Then we flip over to college basketball again for a couple more games of note here heading into the afternoon. Texas is 4-1. They're ranked 15th. They're hosting Wyoming, who's 4-1 on the Longhorns Network. Again, Texas, I don't have a line on this one yet. Texas favored pretty heavily, I would think, but Wyoming's certainly not a horrible basketball team. If you want to flip over and have the Longhorns Network, for goodness sake, I want to check on the status of that particular game. We have one afternoon NBA game at 3:30. The Bucks will be hosting the Blazers. Not a lot expected from that one either. And then we have to head to our late afternoon NFL slate here at 4 o'clock. Broncos hosting Browns, which should be another interesting game if Denver can keep its rather pathetic offense rolling still against this really good defense of the Browns and their backup quarterback. Musical chairs here. The next game we have up is Raiders hosting the Chiefs. Kansas City favored heavily on the road in that one. Eagles hosting the Bills, and finally a good football game on the slate here. If the Bills can keep things going after putting some points on the board last week, they are 1-3 on the road, so we'll see about that. And Cards hosting the Rams. If we can get a healthy Matthew Stafford on the field, this could actually be a good football game as well, despite the fact that both of these teams have losing records. At 4:30 in college basketball, Indiana will be hosting Harvard on the Big Ten Network, if you want to check that out. But again, outside of possible tournament matchups, there's not a whole lot going on again in this particular slate, and that's pretty much it for the rest of the college basketball evening, other than keep an eye on the ESPN Invitational matchups, I should say. Heading into some of the evening NBA matchups here, Celtics are hosting the Hawks at 6 o'clock. Couple playoff teams there. Knicks will be hosting Suns, hopeful playoff team participant in the Knicks. So they've had their struggles recently. Magic hosting the Hornets, good old Magic there. Grizzlies hosting the Timberwolves, Wolves on a tear. Nets hosting the Bulls, moving into the 7:30 slate of games there. And the Cavs hosting the Raptors at 7:30 as well. Nuggets will be hosting the Spurs at 8 o'clock. Again, all regional or ESPN Pass. A lot of these kind of unbalanced matchups per se. Magic Hornets might be a decent game there. Nets Bulls a little bit closer as well. Cavs Raptors might be one of the better ones on the docket. Talent discrepancy in Nuggets Spurs, of course. Hawks Celtics might be one that's interesting as well. Could see some points in that game, that is for sure. And then finally, just the Sunday night game. We will end our Thanksgiving weekend with a nice helping of Chargers at an embarrassing 4-6 for the umpteenth year, hosting the powerhouse Ravens at 8:20 on ABC. Not a whole lot going on in the late window. College basketball tournaments will be wrapped. The NBA isn't playing any super late games, and no college football at that point, obviously. So we will end with the Ravens Chargers on to end up Turkey Day, and that'll be it, to see if Lamar Jackson and Justin Herbert can put a great show on for us. Chargers 2-3 at home. Ravens 4-1 away. Baltimore 3.5-point favorites. And I'll have those picks on michaelwelch.com, but that is your watch guide. I am looking forward to catching some of these tournaments. Christmas has some, the NBA action as well, and some crazy stuff, but I enjoy the tournaments. A bunch of games going already this week. Purdue's played big games. UCLA, Gonzaga, Tennessee. Very excited to, quite frankly, go back and DVR some of those, because we missed some of them already, as you're listening to this already. College football, it's got big stakes, obviously. That's going to be the main target for a lot of folks. The NBA's got not as many games on national TV, of course, but being able to catch those and the big early storylines will be nice. And certainly the play-in games, or the tournament games, I should say, not the play-in games. Still can't get that right. Maybe next year. Maybe next year we'll be able to all get on the same page with that. Of course, we've got the Thanksgiving games. Happy to have the Lions winning, and just excited to kind of put the pieces together and flip around and catch all the action. So thanks for hanging in. I hope this was more educational than boring. I could certainly change the format if it's not as exciting. But thank you very much for tuning in. I appreciate the support. This is the Michael Welch Podcast. Enjoy your turkey legs. Bye-bye.
All my blessings, 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 all my blessings.
I need my blessings every penny, daily counting every single one I'm seeing.